Thanks for listening to Wellness Talk Radio. I'm Chris Costello. So today we are talking with Fred Mandel. We'll also be talking with best-selling author and speaker Barbara Sher. You can go to wishcraft.com, wishcraft.com, to read her first book. It's free on the internet now, and it's just phenomenal. Fred Mandel is a consultant, artist, and creative catalyst, and along with Kathleen Jordan, author of Becoming a Life Change Artist, 7 Creative Skills That Can Transform Your Life. Fred, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So how did Becoming a Life Change Artist come about?
I had a 2+ decade career in financial services as a executive, and in my mid-50s I began to feel stuff roiling around inside of me, things that I wanted to explore but I didn't really have the opportunity to explore. So on a whim, I enrolled in a sculpture workshop. I had never taken an art class since the 7th grade, but I wanted to use my hands and my imagination in a very different way. So I dove into it. I had some wonderful teachers, instructors. They challenged me, they taught me, and I was really amazed at the kind of ways I could learn to express myself and give form to different ideas. And in a relatively short period of time, I was encouraged to start entering pieces in shows and then to have my one-man show. And lo and behold, people actually started buying my stuff. So that was a wonderful surprise and very encouraging. And in the year 2001, I stepped away from the corporate world to pursue my artwork in a much more serious way. So during that time of stepping away, I became curious about other people who were going through significant changes. And I began to interview them in an informal way, and I really began to discover that there were a lot of different stories out there. They were very rich. And I began to realize that, there's a bigger story here. At that point, I was introduced to the woman who became my business partner and co-author, Kathy, and together we ended up interviewing over 100 people who had gone through significant life change. At the same time, I had really dived into studying the great artists, their creative process, their work, their life, and so forth. And I ended up finding that there were some really, really surprising and interesting parallels between individuals who navigate change in their life and the great artists who navigate the creative process in their artwork.
Fred, I love that. You said it at mid-50s. I mean, a lot of people, you had this life change experience. A lot of people, mid-50s, they're either, looking at, okay, how many more years to retirement? Or they're looking at, gee, I hate my job, but I can't change. And so, that's great to hear. There's still a lot of hope for people, 50 and over.
Absolutely. In fact, many of the stories that I relate in the book are of people who are in their 50s and 60s. It's really interesting and remarkable and inspiring, the way people make choices and undertake courageous steps to really reinvent themselves later in life. It's really wonderful.
Right. And Fred, I want to ask you, because this is a really timely topic, considering where we're at as a country with a lot of people struggling, a lot of people, just feeling a little bit lost and needing direction. But one of the things that caught our eye in your introduction for Becoming a Life Change Artist, you've got a list of people. Now, are these real people that you worked with? A neurosurgeon is forced to leave his profession because of a heart condition and finds a new passion. A single mother on welfare becomes a physician. A Hollywood entertainer becomes a rabbi at age 58. Are these real?
These are very, very real folks. In fact, the rabbi who was a Hollywood entertainer is probably not too far from your neck of the woods. And in fact, I interviewed a Jesuit priest who ended up entering the theater. The woman on stamps came from Cleveland, the neurosurgeon from Boston. So interviewed people all over the country, all different age groups, all different circumstances. In some cases, they made these changes by choice, and in other cases, the rug had been pulled from under them, and they decided they had no choice but to make some changes.
You talked about people making changes because they have to. You know, I have a friend that works in a bank. He's very unhappy, head of household, doesn't know what he's going to do, doesn't feel he has the freedom to change. What do you do with people like that?
You raise an interesting point, because I really think that, and this is based upon the interviews that I've done, I really think that the greatest obstacle in an individual making changes is himself or herself. There are opportunities out there. There are new ways of looking at ourselves and uncovering interesting possibilities. But what ends up happening is we either get stuck or we tamp down these feelings of attention that are in our lives. And I think if we begin to pay attention to those and look for fellow travelers, look for other resources outside of ourselves we can bounce some ideas off of, then I think it can open up some opportunities that you didn't think are there. You raise a great point, because the single biggest obstacle in making changes tends to be ourselves.
So how do you get around that? What are some steps people can take?
Well, I think that there are professional resources that you can go to, and I just want to mention them quickly because there are other things I think you can do as on your own. But there's a whole new profession out there called life coaches, and these are individuals who are very practiced and experienced in facilitating a process where people can make changes in their life. So that is a resource that is certainly available to you. But, you know, one of the things that I learned in diving into the artists' lives and looking at the skills that they developed over time was that they developed a set of skills that enabled them to be objective about their creative process. So they developed the skill of seeing, and they employed a number of different strategies in terms of how to look at things in new and fresh ways. One of those strategies, I call it stepping back from the canvas. You know, we might laugh from time to time because you have this classical image of the artist who's in a studio and is up close and personal with his canvas and his paint and his brush and working away, and every once in a while he or she will step back from the canvas maybe 10 or 12 feet. And there's a good reason for that, because it freshens the eye. It gives you a brand new perspective on the painting that you've been working on so closely. And only when you gain that perspective can you see if the painting is working, if the color combinations are working, if the design is working, and so forth. We can take that skill of stepping back from the canvas and apply it to our own lives. We can step back from the canvas of our own lives and go and kind of separate ourselves from the hectic day-to-day routines and demands on our life. So what I encourage people to do is to steal, if you will, a few hours in a morning or an afternoon and go to a favorite peaceful spot. It could be for a walk in the woods. It could be for a park. It could be near the water. It could be up in the hills. It really doesn't matter. And bring a notebook or a sketch pad or a journal with you. And when you do that, begin to ask what I think are very simple but compelling questions. They may lead to complex answers, but you ask yourself questions like, what do I really want to do with my life? And listen to yourself. Don't be afraid of things that might come to the surface that are not especially comfortable. You might ask yourself, how do I really want to be in the world? And am I being that way right now? And if not, how can I get more aligned with that? Are there things inside of me that I want to get out that I'm not paying attention to? And if I give it the opportunity, they may lead me to develop new parts of myself. These are really basic questions, but if you listen to your answers, and you don't have to come up with answers right away, but listen to your body, listen to your imagination, listen to your mind, new things begin to bubble up. And over time, you'll arrive at some answers that require your attention.
If you'd like to hear the rest of Fred's interview, you can order our audiobook, The Dream Makers, at teachoutloud.com. Thanks for joining us on Wellness Talk Radio. I'm host Chris Costello, and we are so glad that you could join us. You can listen every Saturday at 5 o'clock, streaming on the internet at am1440.com, or you can listen to the archive shows at wellnesstalkradio.com. www.wellnestalkradio.com. If you want to send us an email with any questions or ideas that you have, you can email us at media@wellnesstalkradio.com. And we just got back from Florida. Ann Fonfa just put on her 7th annual conference, the Annie Appleseed Project Complementary and Alternative Cancer Therapies Conference. Just fantastic. 3 days of speakers and information. We met a lot of great people. One of the groups, the CharlotteMaxwell.org, is a group that is dedicated to providing access to alternative complementary modalities of treatment for women with cancer, and also to empower women to have control over their lives and healthcare choices. And they also educate the community at large about cancer and about healthcare as a human right. It's a fantastic group. If you're looking to do some good in the world, I highly recommend you check out CharlotteMaxwell.org. They've got a donate button on their site there. They provide all sorts of treatments for women that are struggling with cancer and on a, I think, mostly no-fee basis. So it's a great group. Check it out, charlottemaxwell.org. Also check out Ann Fonfa's project, the AnnieAppleseedProject.org. Tremendous resource site for anyone that is experiencing cancer or is involved with someone that's experiencing cancer. It's AnnieAppleseedProject.org. Don't miss it. Ann Fonfa is a cancer survivor. Very inspiring information and stories about people that have overcome cancer on there. So AnnieAppleseedProject.org. We are so excited to announce that Barbara Sher will be joining us weekly on Wellness Talk Radio. Now, Barbara has often been called the godmother of life coaching. She's written many best-selling books. Her first book, Wishcraft, has been in print for 30 years, and she is a very popular author and has helped thousands of people around the world figure out what they want to do with their lives, how to do what they love, and how to have other people help you get to your dreams. So we are very excited to announce that Barbara Sher will be featured weekly on Wellness Talk Radio, and we invite you to send in your questions to media@wellnesstalkradio.com for Barbara Sher, and we'll be happy to answer those questions on the air every week, every Saturday. So looking forward to having Barbara Sher join us, and I know you are too. I want to thank you for listening to Wellness Talk Radio. So Barbara, one of the things you talk about is how important stories are and can be for people. And I was reading Barbara's Club, and one of the things you wrote about was a fellow that gets people together in Paris. He loves it, and it really clicked. Reading it for me clicked with me and made me realize that that's one of the things I really enjoy is getting people together. So stories can be really powerful.
These stories make very unusual things happen. They're not like anything else. I never know, like that woman who loved turning people onto books and didn't know what to do with it. The way I found that out was she said, I don't know what I want to do. It was in a restaurant in San Francisco airport. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I'm not interested in anything. I said, well, do you like athletics? And I started listing things. And then I happened to say, do you like books? And she said, books. I love books. And I said, what kind of books? And she said, blah, blah, blah. And she said, any kind. I just like turning people onto books. So the truth is, I didn't feel good about that at all. It made me desperately worry because what if I hadn't said books? She wouldn't have known what she loved. She would believe she didn't know what she loved.
Right.
And so once she said, books, I love books, then I knew exactly what to do. I knew where to go. But it killed me. I mean, what if it had been horses? I never did say horses, What if it had been sailing? I never did mention sailing. So that worries me. There's so many people who are an inch away from doing this great stuff, but I didn't mention it, and they think they don't know anything. And that's when you tell these stories, people go, oh, my God, that's me.
Right.
And they're so powerful, and I don't tell them, I tell them everywhere, but I don't focus on stories anywhere and only, And that thing I wrote you when you said how you responded to Jim Haynes, who introduces people at those dinner parties in Paris.
Right.
Then I said, I know you love it.
Right.
Now I know you love it. You wouldn't have told me you loved it unless you happened to see that thing and hanging out.
Right. And the timing on that was so interesting because I'd been at this conference where we were streaming for 3 days. You really have to focus, like you're looking at a screen the whole time. And the whole time I was thinking, every time I'm having the time to connect with all these people that are here, I'm happy, I'm in my element, this is what I should be doing. And it was so interesting to see that email the next day and go,
I didn't understand what you meant by that. Now I understand exactly what you meant. I wish we were telling this story. I wish we were recording this story.
Well, we are recording.
Because now you said it in a way I really understand. I know you mentioned that in your letter, but I just somehow didn't get it. Yeah. Now I get it. What you're saying is you love talking to people and you love introducing people to other people, and you had that experience there where you thought, this isn't what I want to be doing. I want to be out there with the people.
Right.
And then you read about that story about Jim Haynes, which I only happened to bring up because this woman said, I like the art and I like this. We were getting nowhere fast. And finally something made her say, I wish I had a little tea shop and I could just introduce everybody to everybody and let them sit down and talk to each other. And Jim Haynes, I think it was in Scotland actually did have a bookstore coffee shop, and that's exactly what he did. That's what I had read about him in this airline magazine 15 or 20 years ago.
Wow.
And about over 10 years ago, I actually went to one of those parties in Paris that he has every Sunday night. And so when she said that, I said, I heard her voice. She was so happy. She said to me, don't you just love it when you can do that, introduce people to people? I said, no. She said, what? I said, no, that's your thing. That's your gift. She said, well, that's not a gift. It's just like nothing. It's like, walking or laughing. I said, no, it isn't. It's a thing. Let me tell you about somebody you ought to know about. And that's when I told her about this man I had read about in the airline magazine years and years earlier. It was like, she went, oh, my God, I've got to meet him. I said, yes, you too. He's really easy to meet. Fly over to Paris on a Sunday and tell him you're coming and pay him 20 euros for dinner.
Yeah,
she said, oh, my God. So, but what if if she hadn't happened to mention that, I wouldn't have thought of it. She just happened to say, oh, I'd love to have a tea shop. Now, she loved it more than anything, and you love it. But neither of you mentioned it to me.
Right.
Until I mentioned this guy who did it. This guy who did it and made it into a real thing. He's been written up everywhere. He's all over the Internet. He's in 100 magazines now. But if I hadn't mentioned it, neither one of you would have said what you both said, which is, that's me. And that's what stories do. And when you can read about somebody who actually made that into something when you thought it was nothing, like I like to skip down the sidewalk on a sunny day, what am I supposed to do with that? You think it's something like that, or I like to pet my dog's head. But it isn't. It's something else. And on your own, you could totally miss that. It could just totally pass by. And there's so much that you can do when you know it. She's really going to open a tea shop. Her sister is willing to run it. And they've got a little place they can do it in Canada. She's really going to do it.
That's great.
It's wonderful.
That is great.
Introducing people to people is a special gift. I don't have it. I don't do that. I mean, I never think that way. And when you have that gift, you're a very special kind of person, but you need somebody to tell you how important it is and what to do with it, or you need some examples or something.
Right, and I looked back on the cancer conference I was at, and I did have to MC for several portions of it. And looking back on it, I realized I was the only person in the room that really brought the audience into conversation, into feeling like they were part of something. This is a special. People say, well, how do you do that? Or the place was cold and what we expected until you started talking. What are you doing? And your answer is, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing what I enjoy doing. And as you know, one of my big points is you have to pay incredibly careful attention and enormous respect for anything that you enjoy doing, because that is scientific data. It's not just, oh, yeah, well, you like doing that, but now what is it you're talented at and you want to do for a living? No. Wrong. What is it you enjoy doing? And so many times the things you enjoy doing come to you so naturally that you don't think they're anything. And when somebody says, can you teach me to do that? The answer is, I don't think so, because I don't know what I'm doing. Well, what is it when you get up there or you're an MC that you do different? You say, oh, well, I just figure they kind of look a little lonely or bored, and I want to make them feel better.
And anyway, I'm curious who they are, and I want to know them. That's the best you can come up with, and you know that, Chris.
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
That's all you can think of. Well, where'd you get that talent? I didn't know it was a talent.
Well, it's even a feeling of you have to connect. You have to create a bridge somehow.
Because then you get into one of my favorite subjects, kiddo. When you love to do something, that's a sign that you have a genetic ability to do it. That's why nature makes you like it. Nature makes you like what it wants you to do, okay? That's why horses run. That's why all prey animals are really good at running, okay? And they like to run to play before they even need to run, so that when the time comes that they have to run, they can do it. Those are the ones who pass down their genes. This is really objective data. When you feel a desire to paint, an enjoyment to paint, and it makes you happy, that's talent. When you feel you have to do it, then you move into something really interesting. And that's called, people tend to call that, and I call it too, drive. Now, drive is not the same as joy. Drive, when you can't do what you are driven to do, you feel pain. You feel upset. You feel concerned. You are driven to do it. And you can't decide you can't decide on drive. You can only discover it. And everything I've tried to figure out what is drive. All I know is when people say, where's my passion? I say, when you talk about passion, you're talking about drive. That's not the same as joy. Martin Luther King might not really have wanted to do what he did with his life, but he knew he could do it, and he knew it had to be done, and he didn't think anybody else could do it as well as he could, and nobody could. And so he had to do it. And we don't know if he would have rather been a sailor on a sailboat. We don't know. But and someone like me who likes 57 different things, and anything new competes with everything I already like because it's new, and I'd love to learn things and not learn them well, just sort of stick my nose in and see what they are. Someone like me has stuck with the same career for 50 years. How? I mean, it isn't that I don't ever repeat myself. I do often. It isn't that I never, I have to say I never see the same thing twice because somehow it's always interesting to me and it looks new, or else I have a bad memory or something. But how did I stick with one thing? I couldn't stick with writing, and I couldn't stick with painting, and I couldn't stick with singing, and I couldn't stick with anything. There wasn't anything I wanted to do after I knew how to do it. But this was something I had to do. And I had to do it because my feeling was somebody's going to feel really bad if they don't find what they need to find, and they're going to be sad when they die. And I can't stand that because I know there's a way to find it. Now, there are a lot of things in this world that bother me and you and everybody else. I don't like it that anybody's starving. I don't like it that things are unfair. I don't like it that people hurt people. There are a lot of things I can't stand. But the only thing that keeps me up nights or makes me step forward every time and doesn't let me stop is stepping forward and saying to somebody, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I know every person I meet randomly says, I don't know. Let me tell you another brief story. I've told it before. I don't think I've told it to you. I was on a plane years ago, and I think they bumped me up into first class by accident. And I was sitting next to a man he was very well dressed. He had a suit on I knew could pay 4 months' rent where I was living. And I was just beginning speaking. And he said, hello, so what do you do? You don't ever say that to me. If you don't talk to me, I don't talk. I'm fine on a plane. I just do not talk. But you ask me what I do, and I own you. You're mine because I'm driven. And I said, I wrote a book. It teaches people how to do what they want. And he said, oh, really? I said, yeah. He said, what if you can't? I said, everybody can. He said, not everybody. I said, everybody can. The part they love the best, they can. And he pulled a magazine out of the front pocket of the seat in front of him, and he said, this is what I want to do. And it was already open. He must have been reading it. And there was a picture of a man in kind of khaki fatigues outdoors on a field with his foot up on the running board of a Jeep and a big crow on his shoulder. And he pointed to that guy. He said, that's what I want to do. I said, what's the problem? He said, look, I don't have a PhD in ecology or in any earth sciences. He said, I do liaison for the power companies. I have a home in Connecticut. I have 2 kids in college. And I said, well, maybe they'd like to go to someplace like that with you for the summer. He said they don't want to go. They want to go to Florida. They want to go to Disneyland or something on the 2 weeks off they have a year. I have a year. And I said, listen, why don't you write this guy? He said, what's he going to talk to me for? I said, he's up to his bottom in PhDs in ecology. He doesn't have any businessmen who do liaisons for the power companies. He said, what are you talking about? I said, look, you guys are getting a pretty bad rap right now, and as far as I know, you deserve it, for wrecking a lot of places. I wonder if your boss would mind paying you to, while you're out doing liaison with the power companies, go out and do liaison for nature areas they're trying to preserve wildlife and nature areas. What if they did that for publicity reasons, at least, and get you off the rack completely? He said, oh, that's interesting. I said, you bet it is. Why don't you write this guy? He said, I couldn't. So I said, the one thing that you have to say if you want a man to do anything, it doesn't work with women. They don't fall for it. I said, I dare you. And he looked at me. He didn't say anything. About 6 months later, I got a letter from this man. He took my card, and in it was an envelope of him standing next to, I think, the same man, outdoors, no crow, but a Jeep, and he wrote me a letter, and he said, I am doing it. He said, my boss finally went for it. I go to 4 different places. He said, my kids got so excited, they come, that one graduated and the other's on vacation, they come with me. He said, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it, and I still have my job. Now, he didn't, you have to talk to somebody who thinks the way I do to get that kind of focus. Everybody thinks either or, got to quit my job and then I'll starve, sort of thing. But he sat next to me, and I'm driven to not see someone who knows what he loves not be able to do it. That kills me.
Yeah, and so, Barbara, how many people's lives do you think you've changed on airplane flights?
Face-to-face, personally, dozens, but from the books and the letters I get, I don't know, maybe a whole lot more. It should impress me, but what it doesn't. It doesn't make me as happy as it should, because all I think about, and this is one of the natures of drive and why it's different from joy. It gives you satisfaction. It does, but it doesn't. It isn't necessarily joy. Sometimes it is. When I got that card, when I got that photograph from that man, I felt joy. But one of the reasons I can't stop is because I know too many people. I get letters every day from somebody saying, Barbara, I'm really sorry. I never heard of you until last week when somebody gave me one of your books, and now I realize, and my God, this changes everything. Thank you. And I think, that's another one. How many thousands are just not going to do it, not going to know about it? That this one phrase that everybody debates who said it first. I thought it was Benjamin Disraeli, but somebody said, too many people will go to their graves with their music still in them. It's like, don't say that to me. That's in the back of my head probably all the time, and that's what drive is. Now, where does it come from? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that drive takes a talent like my willingness and ability to communicate in any form whatsoever, with books or speaking or anything. And something painful from my childhood, either that I felt my mother didn't get what she wanted, or that I was never going to be recognized, or something. Born into a family, didn't know who I was. I don't know what it was, but there's some kind of thing that you start as a small child to try to fix. And it's so natural to you, you don't even know you're doing it. Like you stepping forward to want those people not to be whatever way you felt they were. They were isolated and they were listening, but they weren't warm.
Engaged.
They weren't safe. They weren't excited. They weren't involved. They weren't connected. And that means that your ability to pull people together, that innate talent that you don't even know is a talent, you just do it, is mixed with something, I think, my theory is, mixed with something from your past that you've probably been doing that since you were a little tiny kid. It doesn't just show up when you're 8 or 12 or 15. It's just always there. And it's about some kind of sadness, some kind of what I call childhood deficit. And lo and behold, every time I ask people, that's what it turns out to be. If you love to paint and you're gifted at it, then you paint and you're happy. If you have to paint because you'll feel something's wrong if you don't, then you're driven. And I'm not saying which is better. There are a few people who say, I'm not driven. I just love to do it. And I say, oh, boy, you're lucky. Good for you.
Right.
But when you're driven, there's something wonderful about that, too. It's like you feel like what you do has meaning, real meaning. It makes a real difference in the real world. I mean, if it's about trees, then it makes a real difference to trees, or to a world that needs trees. It doesn't matter what it is, but you never have a feeling that what you're doing is meaningless when you're doing something you're driven to do. And all I do is help people find it and give it a name so they know it's a thing. And you found out. You said, I think you said, I'm an MC, or I like public speaking. It's like, yeah, that's right. You have a gift for that, but it's more than that, kiddo, because there's a lot of public speakers. Everybody was speaking publicly up in front of those people before you got there. And the thing didn't happen till you got up there. The thing you wanted to happen didn't happen till then. And then it happened. Did it? I'm assuming it did.
Let's talk a little bit, though, about the gifts. I mean, how do people find those gifts? How do they find them?
It's really, there's nothing to it. All you have to do is figure out what you enjoy doing. It's that simple. You cannot, now it's not so easy to always figure out from what you enjoy doing what you're gifted at. And if I were talking to you and you were saying, Barbara, I don't know what to do with my life, I'd say, okay, what do you enjoy? Because I know that genetically, if you were designed to be an athlete, that you love running or playing games. I know that. And I know that if you're a born singer, you love to sing. I know that. And a lot of people don't think about that. They say, well, and as a matter of fact, I just saw a letter today over at my online site, the Hanging Out site. You probably saw it before I did. This woman said, I believe you, Barbara, you're right, but what I want to know is this. I love to play piano just for myself. I'm not that great at it, but it makes me really happy, and when I come home, I really unwind playing piano, and I'm sure I'm not gifted at it, although one neighbor said that when she was doing her yard work, she enjoyed hearing my piano. I want to know, how is that my gift? And I didn't even answer her. Someone else went in and answered her comment, and she said, God, I have it here. So I think I even printed it out somewhere. She said, well, you may not have the gift of a concert pianist, but you obviously love playing piano. And that means you're going to play it in a way that's full of love. So you might be one of those people at restaurants that make everybody happy because you play love songs at the piano, and people can propose to each other. Or you might be one of those people who play at church and with your whole heart and make everybody feel inspired. Or you might be someone who just loves music, and when you sit down and play it, you might not be concert perfect, but you play it with love. And people hear the love, and they love the music. That's the difference between a good pianist and a great pianist, is not how well you play. Yeah, to be a concert pianist, you have to play pretty damn well, but if you take two concert pianists who both play brilliantly, and one of them pours love into that music, everybody knows who the winner is. Everybody. Arthur Rubinstein used to make mistakes on the stage all the time, and he did not give a damn. And he didn't care, but I heard him twice in person, and his music makes you happy. It doesn't fill you with awe, it just makes you happy, because when he plays, he's happy. And so that's a gift. That's a special gift. Love equals talent. It's a sign of genetic gift. It's a sign of genetic ability. And it's a combination, because obviously he has something with his hands, and he has something with his timing, and he has something with his ear, and he has something with his ability to read and to sight read. There's a whole bunch of things that go into everything. And he's got them all. But he loves that music. And when he plays it, you hear it differently from when anybody else plays it, no matter how good they are.
Right. And, Barbara, I think you really hit something there, too, when you mentioned the mistakes. People that really are driven and love what they're doing, I think somehow they find a way to get past the mistakes. They minimize that, whereas I think a lot of people that get stuck really are a lot
doing
of our
the
schooling. Yeah, a lot of our schooling is set
yeah.
up to, if you make a mistake, quit, that's it, you're done. And, even we've experienced tremendous, challenges with the live video streaming stuff because it's a new, it's a new world. It's a new thing.
It's a whole new technology. It's fabulous, yeah.
And yet, we just hurdle ahead. It's interesting. It's a mindset difference.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've never entirely put the two together. But you're totally right. When you're driven to do something, it's too important to bother with things that will stop it. That is, perfect is good, but doing it is important. It's more important than perfect. And, that perfectionism is a pretty interesting thing. There's always a high standard in professionalism that you see and you want to meet, that becomes a standard. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. You should try it. But, nobody ever meets it. And the people who do meet it usually have zillions of dollars and a huge staff and an incredible studio. And those people, very interestingly enough, they need the kind of love in there that they might not have, and so it doesn't even matter. If you look at a lousy movie, you will see the most advanced technology of your life because every professional Hollywood movie is stunningly, it's amazing, the technology in it. And you've seen a lot of bad movies where you just doze off. Or they just don't hold together. They don't work for you, or they look good, but they didn't do it for you. And you got to say they got to try to do a clean job because that's what you expect in a Hollywood movie. But something important's missing. And if you don't have the resources or the interest to bury yourself in what's required to do a perfect Hollywood movie, technically, but you're driven to get something wonderful out there, then perfectionism falls by the wayside. You try, but it's not number one. It's at best number two. With me, it's number 11. I just don't give a damn. The only thing I want to do right is I'm like a bloodhound. I got my nose directed at people who do not know what they want, and they can't wink, blink, or say anything without me seeing it. I don't care if it's raining or my shoes fell off. I'm like a bird dog who sees a bird. You can't kick me off the hunt. You can't, because the difference between perfection and importance, has to do with being driven.
It's great to have you on Wellness Talk Radio and to be talking about these things because I think, people need to hear these things. I mean, I don't even want to tell you this conversation I had this week where my 10-year-old son came home and he said he had asked a friend of his, my son gets a lot of these issues and ideas through osmosis from the show that he hears taping and all that. But anyway, he came home and he said, Mom, I asked so-and-so what they want to be when they grow up, what they want to do. And the child told him, I want to work at Walmart.
What?
I want to work at Walmart or Albertsons. And I thought to myself, this message that you have, this message of looking at your strengths, looking at what you can do, having a vision for your life is so important. And even, it needs to be started at a young level.
Well, what really has to be, I think, here's the big problem. I think most people, this is where most people go wrong, and they make it bad for their kids. They think that if you fantasize something wonderful, that's one thing, but if you get realistic, that's Walmart.
Right, and the conversation was great, too, because my son said, well, so-and-so, you only make $8 an hour at Walmart. And he went on to lecture him about how, he's going to be a famous singer and an actor. And, my son's got the opposite overvision problem, I think.
That's great. God bless your son. But people don't understand, and this is where parents don't teach the Walmart kids the right thing, and where they will try and talk your son out of the fact that he's so unrealistic. If he says, I want to be a famous singer, you have to only ask one question. What part of that do you love the best? And if he says, showing those bastards at school that I'm not a piece of crap, you say, okay. Well, if you got a good voice, you can sing your way there. Is there anything else you do that you enjoy more? Because you can get there a lot of ways. Or if he says, I just love feeling that music pour out of my throat. That's what I love. You go, you're a singer. Okay. Now, what's realistic about that? It's totally realistic. He can have that. He can have that if he goes to business school. He can have that if he wants to really be a singer. He might find out, as many people do, that you don't want to make money at what you love. You don't rent out your kids. You don't have to make money at everything you love. Most of the reasons you make money is so that you can do things that cost money, like have kids and raise roses. You don't sell your roses, and make your house jolly. You don't rent out the rooms. So the thing is, you can do anything you really, really love to do, and you can do it any way you want. And if you need to be the world's most famous recording artist, and that's the only part that matters to you, then we have to find out what is it going to be singing, or if you want to be known, let's find out what that is, and you get to have that. You get to have whatever part you want. But the first thing you have to do is come up with something fantastic that's a fantasy that makes your heart happen and happy. And once you got that, and I don't care how crazy it sounds, as long as it's true. I just want to eat chocolate cake for the rest of my life, and I see in your face that you mean it, right? That's okay with me. Then we say, all right, now, what form do you want it in? If you say, the only form I want it in is I want a new chocolate cake every day, okay. And then we say, now let's get to part 2. How can we do that? And there's always a way. It's just that a crazy wish like that, when people see they can honestly have a chocolate cake every day of their lives, they love it for 3 days. The 4th day, they lose interest. And the 5th day, they finally move on to what they really want. There's no harm in helping people get what they want. None. You can't go wrong. But the thing is that you must say what you want, and it does not have to be realistic. You must say what you love. You've got to find that. It's purely emotional. It is not practical. If it's practical, you will never get anywhere. You'll get a log jam. Because if you try to figure out what you love that's practical, you will figure out nothing. That's like trying to edit while you write.
Right.
You can't do it. You have to write garbage, and then you go back and clean it up. There are 2 different parts of your brain. And so whatever anybody wants, if their face lights up and they want it, that's when I go after it. The hard thing is getting people to admit what they love most, because people think they can't have what they love most. Once we got that, the rest is duck soup. We can get anybody, and that's another story for another time. I'll tell you some amazing times in workshops where I got people to say what they really wanted, to admit it. They trusted me, and they just said it, and it sounded crazy, and we got it every single time, no exceptions. If I've got a room with 100 people, I can get you anything you want. If I've got a room with 600 people, I can get it for you tomorrow. I've never failed at that. I've had friends who say, what if it's about something you don't know about? I said, and you can't come up with an answer. I said, I never come up with the answer. The answer's always in the room. I just know how to ask for it.
That's amazing. Now, how do you think that happens, Barbara? It's
duck soup. It's like there's something about people. Look, if somebody comes up and says, can I have your money? Can I stay at your house? You get very protective of yourself. It's like, geez, I'm sorry. I can't always do that. But if somebody says, I wish I could do this, but I can't because of that, your brain starts working. I swear to God, it must be in our DNA.
Uh-huh.
We're problem-solving animals, but there's more to it than that. We love to see somebody's picture come true. We love somebody to say it's impossible to do this, because right away we think that can't be impossible. And the magic sentence, the magic question is, what part do you love the most? Because you tell me, you find me something, and I'll show you how to get it if you answer that question. What part do you love the most? I was once, I had about 600 people in the room in New York City, and I had some of the craziest people in the world in that, New York, God love it, is one of everything there. And this wacky-looking lady raised her hand. She was kind of dressed funny, and she's short, and it looked like she was dressed for a part of playing a gypsy in a movie or something. And I said, yeah. And she said, I have an impossible dream. I said, what is it? She said, I need a chimp. I said, a what? She said, a chimpanzee. I said, what do you need a chimpanzee for? She said, and this was long before 9/11. So she said, I have it when I buy, cheap little gifts that people could buy for their kids or something, and I get a basket full of them, and I rent a chimp, and we walk up and down corporate hallways, and people come running out to see the chimpanzee, and they buy all these things, and I make about $400 a day, and the chimpanzee rents for $200 a day, and the only thing is they just raised the rent on a chimpanzee to $600 a day. I'm out of business. I'm going to starve to death.
Wow.
And I said, does anybody have any ideas? Before the words were even out of my mouth, this woman at the back of the room in a really nice suit raised her hand, and I said, yeah. She said, I think we can do better than that. I said, what do you mean? You mean you rent chimpanzees? She said, yeah. I said, we're in New York City. This is Manhattan. What do you mean you rent chimpanzees? She said, we rent wild tigers, too. This is where the commercials are made in this world. She said, we rent pretty much any animal. I said, you do? She said, yeah. And the woman turned around. She said, just come back here on the break. We'll get you a chimp. At that same place, some woman said, okay, I make harps out of a special kind of wood. She described the wood. I never heard of it, and she said there was a stand of it in Wyoming or England or something, and there were 30 trees. They're gone. It's over. I can never make another harp. And somebody at the back of the room raised their hand. I said, yeah. And they stood up and said, do you mean such and so, such and so? And she said, yes. She said, my brother has a stand of those in Australia. To come back here and I'll talk to you. That's what happens when you have 600 people in the room. When you only have 100 people in the room, you still get everything. You just don't have the exact right person. You have somebody who knows something.
So, and
that's how things happen, not with positive thinking. I just want to choke everybody who says, if you believe it, you can achieve it. I feel like when I go to a doctor and I get medicine, I want medicine that works even if I don't believe in it. I don't want the job of believing in things. I want them to work. And positive thinking isn't enough. You need help from other people who have information and context, and they will support you. That's what you need. I
mean, this is obviously a huge gift of yours. And how do you go into a room and make that magic happen?
Oh, duck soup. You do an idea party. I've designed it. I've got the instructions. Or you join it. You create or join a success team. I wouldn't just say it and tell people how to do it. I've got ways for you to do it. I have a friend who says, you are my hero of how. I have practical steps where every single... You know why I invented success teams? I invented that kit. And it goes with my book, Wishcraft, the 30-year-old book, right? Been in print 30 years, right? Never been out of print. I invented the Success Team Kit, which is basically a workbook with an audio where I run the whole thing just in case you're afraid to talk to people. And you get 5 people in a room, and you hand them each a worksheet, and you hit the button, and I start saying, hi, you're in a success team, and the goal of this team is to make sure that everybody in this room gets whatever they want, no matter what it is. That's the whole goal. And then I say, open to page 1 and do this, and they do turn me on again. So it's 8 weeks, 8 meetings, and the 7th meeting is an idea party where everybody invites a friend or 2, and the only qualifications for these friends is they have to not be hateful or angry or sarcastic or mean or, hopelessly negative. They just be anybody, the milkman, your 12-year-old son, your grandmother, anybody can come. And then you say the magic sentence. You say, here is my wish, and you explain what it is. And then you say, and here's my obstacle. Here's why I can't do it. And everybody goes, well, wait a minute now. I read an article about, wait, hold on a second. Let me make a phone call. And you have an idea party. And you get a list of ways to do it. Or people will make phone calls, amazing phone calls for you. You know the cowboy story. Did I tell that story to you?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Oh, this is so good. Do we have time for this?
Yeah, sure.
I get a call from a success team leader who handles most of Canada, actually. And she said, Barbara, you got to hear this story. She said, it started a couple years ago, but now it's just over the top. I said, what? She said, there was a team here of women. She started it, and then they kept running the team. And it was mostly business women and one accountant, kind of a shrimpy, nerdy guy. But he knew everybody in Toronto, and so whenever these women they had a wish and they needed something, he knew who to send them to. He was just the most helpful guy in the world. And after a while, they said, listen, you have to tell us what you want because we want to give, you're just so incredible for us. And he said, oh, no, I want. Finally, they said, you got to do it. We can't take from you anymore. It's not fair. You got to tell us. He said, I can't tell you what I want. You'll laugh. And they said, of course we won't laugh. Barbara says, you never laugh at someone's dream. He said, okay, I want to be a cowboy. So naturally they laughed. and somebody said, what's the obstacle? He said, what do you mean, what's the obstacle? I don't even know if there are cowboys anymore. I've never been within 20 feet of a horse in my life. I just saw cowboy movies when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a cowboy. That's all I've ever wanted to be.
Wow.
And somebody said, I don't even know if they exist. Somebody said, hold on just a minute. She called her roommate. And 20 minutes later, they got a call. The roommate had an uncle in Alberta who had a cattle ranch. And they hit the speakerphone so they go, oh, here's this thing happen. And he gets on the phone, and then he says, hi, this is so-and-so. And the girl who knew her said, hi there, yeah, we want you to talk to this guy, this accountant. And he said, good. And he gets on the phone, and he says, I hear you're an accountant. He said, yeah. And he said, I wonder if you'd fly out here to Alberta once a month for 5 days a week and take care of my books. And the accountant said, well, but, you can do that online. He said, I know I can do it online. I don't want my business online. I want somebody to come here. He said, oh. He said, I'll fly you here, and you can work. He said, well, but there's something you ought to know. He said, what? He said, I want to be a cowboy. I said, I don't care. He said, you got a lot of cowboys here. You can work in the mornings and be a cowboy in the afternoon or stay an extra week, whatever you like. We have a drive coming up. You might not want to do that right away till you learn more what you're doing. And he went, oh, but I can't swap you. I have to be paid. And the guy got mad. He said, listen, I'm a successful rancher. I'm a cattleman. I pay my people well. You want the job or don't you? He said, yes, took the job. So he flew out there, and he sent back a photograph of him, barely sitting on a horse with a huge cowboy hat on. And within 2 years, he was going to 4 different ranches. He was doing his Toronto work online. He never went home at all. And the day she called me, he had sent them a video of him riding after a little tiny cow and roping it and taking it to the ground and tying it up and smiling at the camera and waving, and he sent it to them. He's a cowboy, and it didn't cost him a penny. He makes at least as much money as he did to start with. Now, how about going from utterly impossible, not only in his eyes, but probably in yours when I told the story, to actually doing it? What's the bigger difference between those two? That's total. This guy could have gone to his grave thinking he could never be a cowboy because everybody would have told him you can't be a cowboy. And even the people who knew that ranches existed would have said, you can't stop being an accountant and be a cowboy. You never make any money, and you're going to miss Toronto in the movies. And, everybody would say, you either do this or you do that. But that's not my philosophy. You do both. You do all 10.
Right. And he survived everybody laughing the first time it came up, right?
Well, he knew they loved him. He knew they loved him.
Good.
Because he was the sweetest guy in the world. But, that's the difference. So the secret to success is not attitude. The secret to success is an idea party. People who want to see you make it. And when you've got people who want to see you make it, you're good. Then it happens. See, I can help you figure out what you should do because that's one of my gifts. And other people can because wish and obstacle stimulates that problem-solving part of them. But all by yourself, when you have a list of ideas, nothing happens. You have to belong to you have to have a buddy or a class or a coach or a success team where they say, what step are you going to take this week? Do you need some help? Can we make some phone calls for you? Can we drive you somewhere? Do you want moral support? Do you want us to holler at you and threaten your life? What do you want? What do you need?
Right.
And call us as soon as you're finished,
Yeah.
And that's how we get through college. That's how we do things that we wouldn't do anyway. Did you ever, in the summertime, say, well, I'm going to read all those books I never got a chance to read in college? And you never read them in the summertime because you don't have to.
Right.
But you always read them during class because you do have to.
That's one of the big takeaways I've noticed from interviewing the best-selling authors and everything. None of these people do it on their own. They almost have a machine, working to get them to that level.
But what I love about success teams is that it's everybody's machine. You don't have to be rich or established. The people on radio can reject you, and the publishers can reject you, and the filmmakers can reject you, and everybody can reject you, and you can still do it. Because there's somebody, especially with the Internet, God love it, there's somebody who knows how you can get it up on the Internet, how you can get past the dragons to the people who want to see talent. Somebody knows how to do that. Somebody knows how to do that. And why would they do it for you? Just because you asked in the right way, and people can't resist.
Right. And so, Barbara, where can people find more about the success teams and about your work?
You should really come to barbarasclub.com. Everything's over there. There's an free idea party going on all the time, and everything else I do, too.
Well, I am so excited that you will be on Wellness Talk Radio every week, co-hosting and just sharing this incredible information and your life's mission with people. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
So we want to thank you again for listening to Wellness Talk Radio. You can go to wellnesstalkradio.com to find out more about who we're interviewing. And we just got back from Florida. Ann Fonfa just put on her 7th annual conference, the Annie Appleseed Project Complementary and Alternative Cancer Therapies Conference. Just fantastic. 3 days of speakers and information. We met a lot of great people. One of the groups, the Charlotte Maxwell AnnieAppleseedProject.org is a group that is dedicated to providing access to alternative complementary modalities of treatment for women with cancer, and also to empower women to have control over their lives and health care choices. And they also educate the community at large about cancer and about health care as a human right. It's a fantastic group. If you're looking to do some good in the world, I highly recommend you check out charlottemaxwell.org. They've got a donate button on their site there. They provide all sorts of treatments for women that are struggling with cancer, and on a, I think, mostly no-fee basis. So it's a great group. Check it out, charlottemaxwell.org. Also check out Anne Fonfa's project, the AnnieAppleseedProject.org. Tremendous resource site for anyone that is experiencing cancer or is involved with someone that's experiencing cancer. It's AnnieAppleseedProject.org. Don't miss it. Anne Fonfa is a cancer survivor. Very inspiring information and stories about people that have overcome cancer on there. So AnnieAppleseedProject.org. Thanks for listening to Wellness Talk Radio. We hope you have a happy and healthy week.